Hi, I'm Rabbi Abby Sosland, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. I'm an educator and a spiritual advisor based at the LaFell School in Westchester County. Today, I'm based in my own home, as so many of us are, and I want to thank you for bringing me into your home in this crazy time. Bravo for joining 24 in 24, the whole Tanakh in 24 days. Today we'll be studying together the book of Judges. And I wanted to say that for me, learning Torah, whatever that means, whether it's Torah, Tanakh, Talmud, the entire 2,000 years of Jewish literature, is the thing that gets me through these tough times. We say that Torah Hashem is mishivat nefesh. It is a restorer of the soul. And I hope that today, just by learning a little bit together, we can restore the soul. I want to dedicate this learning with you today to my father of blessed memory, Rabbi Henry Sosland, Alav Hashalom. He wrote a book about the 17th century Italian preacher, Jacob Sahalone. And the amazing thing about Jacob Sahalone is that he was famous for delivering what were called window sermons. During the 1657 plague in Rome, in the Roman ghetto, he would open his window when no one was allowed out of their homes, and he would deliver divrei Torah. He would deliver words of Torah. And I'm so inspired by that. And I feel like today I'm delivering my words of Torah through the modern window. And so here I am reaching out to you in your home from my home to study together. The book of Judges is a story of complicated leadership and very deep humanity. We begin as the book of Joshua concludes. Vayishalach Yehoshua et ha'am vayelchu v'nei Yisrael ish l'nachalato lareshet et haaretz. Joshua dismissed the people. This is in the middle of chapter 2 of Judges, but we can hear that we're finally closing out the book of Joshua, and the Israelites went to their allotted territories and took possession of the land. So here we are. All should be going well. We've conquered the land. We're getting settled. But of course, in classic human form, the minute we get too settled, we start to get a bit comfortable. Now, of course, at first, all is well. The people served the Lord during the lifetime of Joshua and the lifetime of the older people who lived on after Joshua. Anyone who had witnessed all the marvelous deeds that the Lord had wrought for Israel. So it looks like, everything's fine. But even here, we can see a little bit of a hint that it will not always be perfect, because the people served the Lord during the lifetime of Yehoshua, Kol Yemei Yehoshua. What does that mean? And what's going to happen when Yehoshua dies? We're about to find out. One of the main themes of this book is that you can never really settle in. As soon as you get settled, you're going to start to feel itchy. You're going to start to feel antsy, as all humans do. And inevitably, something will change. And as we know, nothing is ever truly stable. As Pema Chodron writes, the rug is always about to be pulled out from under us. We just aren't always aware of that. So Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died. Okay, he was 110 years old, 10 years younger than Moshe was, but he was basically the Moshe of his time. He was Moses' successor, and he was a good leader. He brought us into the land, and he died close to that perfect age of 120. As soon as he died, the rest of his generation died as well, and a new generation arose who did not know him and who did not respect him. If you see the language here, it should remind you of another place in the Torah. Asher lo yad'u et Adonai vayakom dor acher, another generation arose, which had not seen, had not experienced the deliverance of the Lord, and they did not know God. Anyone recognize this line? Yes, it's from the beginning of Shmot, when a new Pharaoh arose who did not know Joseph. The biblical writer seems to be playing with us here. We are in many ways no better than Pharaoh. All human beings have a short memory. All human beings can be grateful for a minute and then lose their focus and go astray. And all human beings really have a tendency towards straying from the path. In a way, the generation in the book of Judges is no different. So what do we do? As we do any time when we are straying from the path, we do what is offensive. Harab einei Adonai, what is bad in the eyes of God, and we follow other gods. It's all just so predictable. And God gets angry. It feels familiar, but God was incensed at Israel, and even the language feels like the Torah. I feel like, oh, I've been down this road before. And in fact, throughout the book of Judges, we will go down this same road a number of different times. This is what so many people call the cycle of the Judges. So everything's fine at the top of our circle. Israel serves the Lord, all is well. And every time things are going well, why not stray a little? And that's what we do. We fall into sin, we worship idols, and then something bad happens. So here on this picture, it looks like we're enslaved. Maybe we're enslaved, maybe some attacker comes, maybe there's a plague, maybe something happens. And then we cry out. When things are hard, all of a sudden, we need God. And then God raises up a judge, and then Israel is delivered. And then the whole cycle starts again. So this is the cycle that happens throughout the book of Judges. But I would say in many ways, it's such a human cycle, all of us. We get comfortable, all is well, and then, maybe I'll start doing something a little funny here. Or maybe I'll just do something crazy now that everything's fine. And then when things get hard, we turn to God. And then when things get easy, we forget again. So that's just the humanity of the book of Judges, except here it's told in quite a bit of drama. So who exactly were these judges? The word shofet from our title means a judge or a chieftain. So in most of the cases in this book, the shoftim aren't actually judges. As Robert Alter writes, they're often ad hoc military leaders. They're more like chieftains than judges, although as he says, chieftains would not be a great title for a book. What he points out is that this process of God raising up a leader at the very moment that we need it is what led Max Weber to borrow a term from the Greek and call this political system of this sort charismatic leadership. That is, that the authority of the leader does not derive from hereditary line nor from election by his peers or by his people, but it comes about suddenly, when the Spirit of the Lord descends upon him. And through this investiture, Alter writes, he is filled with a sense of power and urgency that is recognized by those around him, who thus become his followers. So the book of Judges is filled with these kind of chosen leaders, these kinds of charismatic men and one woman, and they are kind of outrageous stories. So each one is almost more outrageous than the other. I'll just mention a few. The left-handed Ehud ben Gera, he killed the Moabite king Eglon. He pretended he had a secret message for the king, was invited into his chamber. The king dismissed the attendants, Eglon, and Ehud leaned in, drew his hidden sword from his left hand, where nobody would have checked it, and stabbed the king in his belly, leaving the sword to be swallowed up and disappear in the skin. The king's assistants figured that the king was relieving himself and they wanted to give him some privacy. I mean, these stories. And they gave the king way too much privacy, only to come in and find him dead. Deborah, the only female among these judges, commanded the battle through her warriors, Barak, and Yael, but she is the one who actually acted as a judge. We are told she sat under her palm tree, and all of the people of Israel came to her for judgment. As she was also an amazing military strategist and sent out Yael to defeat Sisera. There are some amazing stories. I recommend you go in and learn about Devorah. She was amazing, but she also was able to kind of have that position of strength, sitting and hearing what people needed and offering a wise judgment. Yiftach, who had a reputation as an incredibly successful warrior. He made a crazy vow to give away the first thing that would come through his gate if he won the battle. And of course, the Bible is so incredibly ironic and literarily kind of intense to read. Who comes through the gate but his own daughter? We don't entirely understand exactly what happens at the end of that story. There are a number of different readings of many of these stories, but the tragedy of making a crazy vow, if you let me win this one time, I'll do this, and then recognizing that that vow could lead to really horrible things. We have to be so careful with the things we say. And then Samson, who the Herculean warrior, the man of unbelievable strength, who is born after a powerful angelic communication to his parents, and whose love for the Philistine woman Delilah ultimately brings down his entire his life, ultimately leads him to bring down an entire house of Philistines with him in it. So these crazy different charismatic leaders each have their moment. Each has sort of an amazing story. Some are a little bit less interesting, but there's some unbelievable stories in the book of Judges. But ultimately, when each one dies, the cycle of sin continues. We're human. We don't stay comfortable for long. So we don't really do that well without solid, thoughtful, planned leadership. And by the end of the book of Judges, we've fallen pretty far. The end of the book of Judges shows us what happens when charismatic leadership is not sustained, when leadership is not well thought out, when it's all over. What happens? The people are left to do whatever they want. And chaos very often ensues. And the end of the book of Judges is one of the most troubling stories of the entire Tanakh. The rape of the concubine at Gibeah, the rape and dismemberment of a woman, which leads to civil war and complete devastation. The story itself is horrifying, and unfortunately it's disturbing to read in our times, just as it must have been in ancient times. As poet Erica Dreyfuss writes in her poem, reading chapter 19 in the book of Judges, she writes, "You say that the Bible is just an old book, but when I consider the story of a Levite's concubine, I wonder what has changed since those ancient times." Unfortunately, so much of the Tanakh, fortunately and unfortunately, I guess I should say, is resonant with the times in which we live. The incredible violence, and yet the incredible capability of humanity to continue to come back, to continue to reach out to God, to continue to have that cycle. The cycle can be something that we say, "Ugh, that's so upsetting." And on the other hand, it could be something that we say, "Wow, that cycle means we always come back," right? There is suffering. There's always going to be redemption. The end of our book ends on a note of suffering. The horrifying ending of the book reminds us what happens when charismatic leadership doesn't last, when we all do our own thing. Look at what can happen. The last line of the book seems to send the message that the whole book is intended to teach. Bayamim ahem ein melech beYisrael, ish hayashar be'einav ya'aseh. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did as he pleased. Everyone doing his or her own thing doesn't work in a functional society. By the end of the book of Judges, we're ready for a new kind of leadership, and we're ready for the prophetic leader, starting with Samuel in the next book. Ultimately, we do need leadership that is thoughtful. For while people continue to do the cycle, human beings continue to forget what our purpose is, and then to remember when times are hard what our purpose is. It's good to have leaders who can carry us through those times. Leadership that is not about the person, but that is about the people. Leadership where the leaders are thinking of others, sustaining people through the long haul, and not just in those moments of battle or fear. A real leader needs to be opening windows and connecting across communities, bringing people together through shared values. I want to pray for us today that we can use the lessons of the book of Judges to find our own wisdom, to hold on during the hard times and recognize that the cycle will come back around, to look out the window and share our Torah and our inspiration with one another, and hopefully to find the kind of leaders in our midst that we so deeply need. Thanks for being here.